And then when Superman did that, bro, and then oh shit, what's up, y'all? So Superman came out recently. Yeah, I got a bucket. So about this movie, I don't have a problem, but shit. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Next Gen Geek. I'm, of course, your host, Darius, and the latest James Gunn movie and the start of the new cinematic DC universe, Superman, has officially come out. And guys, I gotta tell you, when I was already excited about the movie, right? I was already looking forward to it. I'm a big Justice League the Animated Series, Justice League Unlimited, and Superman the Animated Series fan in general, as I grew up on those things. So when I first saw the trailers, obviously it had a very Silver Age look to it, had a very animated look to it, and that already got me very excited. Despite a couple of my other criticisms, or really things I didn't too much like, such as the Superman suit, I was looking forward to this movie. Am I excited about the future of the DC Universe? Oh, yes I am, baby! But I gotta tell you guys my honest thoughts about Superman 2025, directed and written by James Gunn. In this movie, we already follow Superman as he is 3 years into his career, which is definitely different and new, or at least different in the modern day sense of superhero content that we haven't really seen before, or at least from the DC side of things, on occasion, especially on the big screen. So that already intrigued me from a storytelling and narrative point of view, as basically kind of how the movie is structured, it very much feels and looks like a comic book. Think of this movie, and I think the rest of the DC universe, at least how James Gunn is approaching this, is more as you walk into a comic book shop and there are many issues of, let's say, Superman, Black Lightning, or a John Stewart Green Lantern, Justice League show, or Batman Universe comics, right? You have basically a whole variety of that with different issues spanning from issue number 1 to all the way to issue 8, 10, however going forward. It felt like one of those issues where I just grab it from the shelf, not knowing previously or whatever, and I just dive right into what is in front of me and having a good time. And that's what this movie really did well for me, was that you really jump into the action. For a 2-hour and 9-minute movie, this was a very fast-paced movie, very fast-paced. And we're gonna get into why that's also a bit of a con later in this review. But overall, it had a very comic booky feel, and I think for me, and I think a lot of other people, really liked that part of the movie. If this is a movie that you wanted a similar feeling to Man of Steel or anything from the regular DCEU, you're not getting that here. I'm sorry to bust your bubble. You're not getting that here, and it's not really, and I find it breathtaking. I find it like finally we're moving away from what the DCEU was trying to do and what Snyder was trying to do, and doing something a bit more heartfelt, uplifting, more hopeful, and that's something that James Gunn Superman really does well. We have a lot of characters from the Superman lore, such as Lois Lane, his love interest in this movie, and we already know that they're about 3 months into their relationship, and that's something that's already been said previously, so I'm not spoiling too much. And you have Lex Luthor, who has basically been studying the Man of Steel for about 3+ years and understands knowing how to combat this alien, this meta-human sort of thing from his point of view. And so the movie overall, for me, I really liked the aspect of really giving that brightfulness and that hopefulness that is normally associated with Superman. Superman has always been a character that is associated with hope, but also really showing humanity the best in us of what we can be, not necessarily because of powers, but really because of the heart that we have. And Superman in this film really embodies that, especially later on when we have him really recovering from an incident earlier in the movie at the Kent farm, and what Pa Kent says to him, and that's a really heartfelt and genuine moment that you can already tell right then and there. One of the biggest highlights, of course, is really Superman himself, played by David Corenswet. And I gotta tell you, he does a phenomenal job as the Man of Steel himself. And it is really great to see a new Superman take on this mantle for the big screen. And not necessarily that there's anything wrong with Henry Cavill's Superman. Again, I love Cavill. I really like the guy. I think he was a solid choice for what Snyder was envisioning for Superman back then. But for us now, this is a really uplifting and really solid take on the Man of Steel that we know. And so throughout the movie, you basically get a sense of Superman's journey in that he is struggling with understanding how to be himself, as well as how to be himself without the political nature of other countries such as America and Middle Eastern countries in the film. And you can see that he's struggling that, like, I don't want to be put on a pedestal of a political figure and that I'm representing America. No, I represent myself. And that is something that is blatantly told to us throughout the film, not only in the beginning with the interview scene between him and Lois, but even throughout the movie. And I find that really interesting, and I really like that take, because this is, if I had to really summarize or give a certain point of view about this movie, I would say this and BVS are very similar in the way of putting Superman in a geopolitical conflict, right? And what are the ramifications of that? And so, and we see that they're similar in that sense, but I felt that with BVS and Man of Steel, there was a more cynical approach to that, where this film is more of a hopeful approach to that. So very two different ideologies going on as far as from what the filmmakers are trying to tell you and what they are creating for this world and everything. And so when it came to the movie, one of my other biggest, really not critiques, but just my worry was also Lex Luthor. How was he going to be as a character? And my God, this is the most pettiest, evil, nonsensical motherfucking Lex we have ever seen, at least on the big screen, at least from myself. I love Christopher Reeve and that era of the Superman universe and what Gene Hackman has done. And I like the other Lexes on occasion going afterwards. But this Lex, my God, he is the most evil. There are things this motherfucker does in the movie that I'm just like, really, my guy? Did you really just do that in front of him? There's a level of evilness that's just like, this is very Lex Luthor, but also in the way of how he's jealous about Superman, that you know that this man is just jealous, oozing jealousy, oozing just that pettiness nature in him. So there's a lot of different layers to this Lex Luthor that does intrigue me about what they're going to do next in the future of this universe. Again, to me, James Gunn started this universe nice, headstrong in a lot of different ways. It's very bright, it's very hopeful, it's very colorful. The suit, in some aspects and some shots, did not sell me completely, but overall, I like the vibe and the tone that James Gunn is going for with this version of Superman and this version of the DC universe. When it came to Superman and Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane, that chemistry was off the charts. It felt great, it felt right. This felt ripped from the comics, and I really did enjoy that part of the movie and really that relationship. And you can see the two ideologies kind of combating each other, but not in a combating each other of you're right, you're wrong, but just understanding the nuances of your actions and what may come from it. And we get into some of the other villains, such as the Engineer and the Hammer of Boravia. Where's the Hammer of Boravia? Let's say he's not, without spoiling too much in case you still haven't seen it, there's a lot to that character, and not necessarily from a character development, but really the association of him and Lex Luthor. And if you know what I'm getting at, you probably know where we're going with this, especially considering Ultraman. So you can put two to two together and really figure it out yourself, sort of thing. One of the things, the other worries I had, this was a worry, and it was the Justice Gang, right? We have Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, we have Halt Girl, and we have Mr. Terrific. I will tell you right now, out of all those three, in my opinion, Mr. Terrific was a huge standout. What I liked about this version of the movie and this lore in this world was that, and especially in consideration to other James Gunn's films, as far as the Guardians and the Suicide Squad and even Peacemaker, to me, this was the least funny. This was the least comedic. I felt that this movie was a bit more balanced as far as its comedy and its moments of trying to be heartfelt and a bit more sincere, and I really did enjoy that. Now, there were, I think, only one moment where I felt that what was happening in the background was a bit distracting to what was being said. But other than that, I can't really pinpoint any other specific thing that I did not like about the movie. Or at least that I felt that the comedy just slapped right under the dramatic tension in the moments that Gunn was going for. And so when it came to the Justice Gang, I felt that to me, that was one of Gunn's ends, to where let me introduce a JLI sort of team, the beginnings of that, to just show a bit more of Superman's the superhero side, who he might know as a hero, and that sort of thing. And I did really like that, especially for Mr. Terrific, as he was a scene stealer. He really was. He was a scene stealer all the way through a good chunk of the time. I thought Edi Gathegi did a phenomenal job portraying this character with what he was given, and I really did enjoy his little witty remarks. I like that you can tell he is one of the smartest guys in that room. When you put him up against Superman, Hoult Girl, who is young, so I will give credit to that to a certain degree, and even Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, he is very smart, he is very intelligent, he knows what he's talking about, he moves with confidence, and that is something that to me is like, that is very Mr. Terrific, and I really did enjoy that. Not only that, but I felt that this movie, and even with Mr. Terrific, it was more situation comedy than necessarily one-liners or jokes being said. It was more about the situations at hand that made some of the moments really funny, laugh out loud moments, even with some of the cameos, surprise cameos, and I will spoil one. So if you don't want to hear what I'm about to say, I am going to touch on some spoilers in this review, not a lot. So this is a semi-spoiler review, but I'm not going to be spoiling anything heavily plot related or anything like that. You get that Peacemaker cameo, and bro, I'm
considered the finest marksman in the world. Talking about your butt and stuff. And also you said that I suck.
My entire theater laughed out loud because it's like, really, this guy is on TV talking about how much he doesn't like Superman? Really? Really? Like, that was like everyone in my theater was laughing out loud during that moment, and I thought that was hysterical. When it came to the other Justice Gang members, Guy Gardner, the thing is with the Justice Gang, they didn't have too much to do, but he used them in right moments for the sake of what he's trying to go for, especially in this film where we talk a lot about that nature versus nurture, and you see that throughout it. You see it with what Clark Kent's parents from his Earth want him to do and what his Kryptonian lineage wants him to do, and they're very different ideologies, and some people after the movie has come out was not too keen on that, and that is very understandable. Especially creatively, you may not be well versed, or let's just say you just don't know that much, or you're just like, that's not how they're normally portrayed, and yeah, they're not normally portrayed in that way. But for the sake of this film, I understood what Gunn was going for, and for that idea of having two oppositions of growing up, where your Earth family is more like, we need to give you the tools to make fools of yourself and to be the best version of yourself, and only your actions determine who you are. Whereas his Kryptonian lineage and his Kryptonian parents, yes, they may want him to lead with love, compassion, and amongst those things, but later on we find out that a bit of that message and what they wanted him to do, it kind of almost was hypocritical in a sense where one was love, later on it's like maybe not too much love, but really be a hammer and a fist if they need that sort of thing. Take as many wives. It's become a whole thing on the internet, but I don't want to dive too much into that. I really want to dive into what I liked and what I didn't like about the movie. But there's a lot that I liked. Krypto, surprisingly, was not used too much, but was given the right amount, especially for the story at hand and what Lex was also trying to do as well. So I really like the uses of Krypto. I think he was adorable little shit, just fucking everything up, but also he's like, you know what, good dog, you did good, you did good, who's a good boy, you mother. Great stuff with Krypto. I absolutely adored him and his inclusion, and I absolutely love that aspect. And so when we get into the other characters such as Hoult Girl, she is one that I will say understood why they picked maybe that character, because historically as well, Hoult Girl she is a warrior first, right? She will kill if she has to, you know? Even though we don't know much about her history in this new DC universe, I can kind of probably see where they're possibly going, even though she doesn't have a lot. It's just really the way she kind of acted in certain situations, especially towards later the end, when she kind of off someone and she's like, I'm not Superman. And I gotta say, I got a bit giddy in my seat. I'm like, that's my girl. That's my girl. So I did get a bit giddy right there. But so Hoult Girl did not have a lot. I do wish we got a little bit more of her. But all the characters, let's just say, I am interested in their journeys after this movie. You know, this new movie starts off the new DC universe, and you can tell it is a world rich of characters and history. I really liked how in the beginning you had a sort of Star Wars-esque crawl. Not an exact, it's not like a full crawl. Think of it as like if you're reading a comic book and you have panels. It's almost like a frame and a frame with text about what's happening or what was happening previously. It's very similar to that. And so just from that beginning, we get a sense of metahumans have been on Earth for about 300 years. 3 decades ago, a baby on Earth crashed. 3 years ago, a lot of threes. I don't know why. I don't know if that's a kinky thing, but a lot of threes. And basically 3 years ago, Superman's arrived on the scene. And then they basically tell you off the bat, this is the first fight he has lost. How I'm viewing it, and a lot of people are saying he's not powerful in this movie, this dude is powerful. He's holding up a freaking building to save people. He held up a kaiju falling. He is powerful. He used super breath to blow himself out a black hole. Do you not understand how powerful you have to be for that? So yes, even though he's taking on a lot of beatings, it's always important to know about Superman. It's always about him coming back up, coming back for the next thing. And again, a good chunk of this movie, and they tell you this in the beginning, he's roughly at like 75-80% of his power. So he's not even fully powered up. And not only that, you have to understand with Superman, he holds back a lot. So again, people wanting that Man of Steel power in a sense, again, I get that they're used to it, but guys, we gotta move on from the Snyderverse. This is a new iteration, a very Silver Age and bright version of this character that so far for me, I absolutely adore this movie. Even though I do have a couple of problems, and I will say one of those things is when it came to the Kryptonian message that his parents left him. One, I understood the aspect of the message and what it was doing narratively, and I think it works to that regard. It's just how they went about it, because how I saw it was that Kryptonian language is an ancient language, so it's very hard for me to understand how the smartest of linguistics on Earth could encrypt that in ancient old language, and this is what, like, that was a bit hard for me to believe, but again, this is the DC universe, and they tell you in this DC universe, this is not the real world or the real world you see outside. This is a mythic animated DC universe that is going to break many laws of physics. Lex Luthor kind of does that when he creates his own little pocket dimension to hold prisoners that you won't see for a while. And one of those prisoners is Metamorpho, who I really did like. I liked a little history they did, especially with his son baby Joey, what Superman had to do. I really did like that, and I really liked how Kryptonite came into play, and not necessarily that Kryptonite is everywhere, but they used Kryptonite in a strategic way to make sure Superman couldn't escape where he was. Because let's face it, we see in the trailers he was in prison. Yes, that was Metamorpho. So I did like that, and I like the utilization of Metamorpho's powers throughout the movie. I thought that was really cool. It felt very much like I'm watching the animated show again from Superman with his introduction. I do want to know a bit more about this version's Metamorpho origin. I really liked what they did with him. And I liked how in the end, when the Justice Gang kind of saved a certain group from getting annihilated, you kind of see Metamorpho using his powers a bit more, a little banter between him and Guy Gardner. I thought that was very nice, very heart. Again, there's a lot of, you can tell this movie was handled with a lot of heart and passion and a lot of hopefulness, especially in the message and the story they wanted to tell. And so overall, like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Now, one of the things I will say is it is 2 hours and like 9 minutes long. It did not feel like 2 hours. Again, once you're in the movie, it goes. It doesn't really give itself enough time to breathe. And I will say that is one of my negatives about the film, where I do feel as if it needed probably an extra 15-20 minutes just to let certain scenes breathe, just to give it more air to it, and not necessarily fluff it or fill a movie with fluff, but just certain moments you can, hey, let this breathe a bit more, don't cut too harshly into the next one, and just go on. Like, no, I want to be a bit more in the moment with a lot of these characters and less on, all right, the next thing. But again, it's a positive and a negative, because I did like that we're moving into the next thing, and how we go into the next thing, it felt like I'm flipping a comic page and it's like, oh, here, oh my God, this thing is happening. What? So I like that feeling, but at the same time, for a movie, I did wish it breathed a bit more. And those are really my biggest two complaints, is really not necessarily that it was the pacing, but just I wish it breathed a bit more on its own. But overall, guys, I really enjoyed this movie. I absolutely loved it. I think the DC Universe is off to a strong start, and I'm excited to see what James Gunn and his team is doing next. So, because as we know, the next movie will be Supergirl, coming out next year. And they did say, if you want a bit more of an edgier film of a super character, Supergirl is that type of woman, is that type of character. And I will spoil another thing. I like that we got that Supergirl cameo at the end. I thought that was funny as hell, especially at the end. Bye, bitch. I'm like, that is the most Supergirl thing and modern day thing you can ever say, especially as a superpowered being. So I really did like her introduction, how she was a bit drunk, because again, that Supergirl that they're adapting is more of the Woman of Tomorrow story. And she is drunk, but there's a lot of reasons as to why she is that way. And so I am excited about this. I'm excited about Supergirl and where they take her from here on out. I'm excited about really the rest of the game. I will say another thing that I wasn't too keen on, it's just, I wish we got a bit more Clark Kent in the movie, because this is very Superman centric. You know, we don't get a lot of the duality of Superman. We get a little bit of Clark Kent, but I wish we had a bit more time in the Daily Planet. And this is why I say I wish the movie was a bit longer, just to give us that more time. Because there are scenes in here where it's like, ooh, you could have stretched that out for a bit more interaction, something more interesting, but they didn't do that. So I do wish that did happen. Perry White, I thought he was fine. He was solid. Great actor, Wendell Pierce. And so Jimmy Olsen, there's things that happen with Jimmy, especially in later on throughout the film, that are just like, really? This is funny how they do it. And I did like it in comparison to what they did in BVS. You guys know what I'm talking about. Oh God, I still hate that moment. But I digress. I think everyone in this movie really did great with what they were given. Cat Grant, very Cat Grant. I loved her to death. I love Mom Pa Kent. So Mom Pa, like that moment when Superman is back on his farm with his parents, and Ma Kent being like, hey, is our boy gonna be good? Even the father getting a bit more emotional about it, like, You can tell this man, he loves his son despite his son being an alien. I'm like, I absolutely, this to me, that is like, that's what makes this Superman. That, because it's like, even though he's an alien, he is human. He's human because of his parents. He's human because of the people around him, such as Lois, Jimmy, everyone. Those are the aspects that make him human. And so when it came to the finale and the climatic aspect, I got a bit emotional. I'm not gonna lie, because this is what I've been wanting from Superman for so long, and we haven't gotten it that much, at least on the big screen. We've been so focused on the Snyder era and doing Superman that way, taking way longer to get him where he needs to be. That is one aspect I loved about this movie, is just like, we got that feeling of, this is a human with powers, right? Like, obviously, yes, he's alien, he's Kryptonian, and he's dealing with that. But you have all of those emotions within one character, and it was great and really inviting to see that in the Man of Steel, instead of him being all stoic all the time. Because let's face it, if someone kidnapped your dog, you gonna say something. You're gonna say something. You're gonna yell, you're gonna scream, you're gonna cry. You're gonna do a lot of these things. Emotions are very unpredictable. So to me, whenever I hear people saying Superman shouldn't be emotional or whatever, he uses it in certain ways, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, this is not that iteration of Superman. This is most likely going to be a Superman growing into that, but he's still going to have his outbursts. Not only that, but he's had outbursts before. The most obvious comparison I can say is really Injustice and what Joker does to Metropolis and his wife, then an unborn child. But there's a couple moments even in Superman in Justice League Unlimited and Superman the Animated Series where he raises his voice. He yells a bit. I'm not gonna say he yells, but like, he's passionate about what he cares about, and so it does irritate him. Everyone's gonna have their own opinion, but for me, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I've already seen it twice. I plan on seeing it a third time before Fantastic Four. And I had a good time with this movie. I left excited about the future of the DC Universe. So guys, let me know what you think about Superman in the comments down below. Is this something you would want to see? Is this something, are you excited about DC going forward now? Because I know I personally am. And as a DC fan, I can't wait to see what James Gunn does with a lot of these characters. So definitely leave your comments down below. I would like to know your thoughts. And is this a movie I recommend you see in theaters? Absolutely. DC's back, baby. And I'm excited.